Hello and welcome to another edition of Lean Catalyst, the monthly series where we bring together like-minded CEOs and leaders who have successfully embraced lean thinking to drive exceptional results in their organizations. And it's through our captivating conversations that we'll dive into their remarkable achievements, uncovering the strategies, insights, and practical wisdom that have propelled them and their organizations forward. Each series is going to feature an in-depth interview with a distinguished CEO who has demonstrated extraordinary leadership in leveraging lean principles. And it's a great opportunity for them to share experiences, strategies, and valuable knowledge that others can apply in their own leadership journeys. I'm going to be your moderator today. My name is Damon Baker, and I'm the CEO of Lean Focus. And without further ado, it is my distinct honor to introduce you to today's esteemed guest, Gary Owens. Gary, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Damon. Good
Awesome.
to see you.
Likewise. So Gary Owens has joined Mesa Labs in March of 2017 as Mesa's Chief Operating Officer. And very shortly after that, he was promoted to the role of President and Chief Executive Officer in September in the same year. And since then, Mr. Owens, or prior to Mesa, Mr. Owens has previously worked for Danaher Corporation, and he joined the multi-billion-dollar global and science technology innovator in 2006. While at Danaher, he held various VP-level positions with responsibilities in acquiring and integrating a number of Danaher's acquisitions, as well as leading one of the largest acquisitions that Danaher made at the time, which was Beckman Coulter. He led the life sciences division of Beckman Coulter as a general manager. Prior to that, Gary worked in the technology field, successfully overseeing the development of several software product lines while expanding sales channels and networks. From an education standpoint, Gary has a BS in engineering from Tulane University and an MBA from Columbia Business School. Is that about right, Gary?
That's about right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Whether that's impressive or not, I'll let everybody else.
Yeah. So Gary, would you mind giving us an overview of Mesa Laboratories? What is the business about? The size, some of the key technologies and products that you serve for your customers?
Yeah. Today we're on a pro forma basis because we are an acquisitive company. We just closed something in October. We're approximately $250 million in revenue. We're about $90 million in revenue 6 years ago. We're a public life science tools company, meaning we provide tools for researchers developing new drugs and getting those drugs to market, as well as medical diagnostics, which tends to kind of overlap. We focus heavily on quality control, meaning we help to ensure that those drugs are designed or made correctly, or often protecting those drugs all the way to the time it gets into somebody's arm, which would mean all the way in the healthcare field as well. And additionally, then helping to make sure that people get matched with the right drugs, where we do things in the diagnostic field related to therapy selection, or PGX, which deals with variants in how your body metabolizes drugs. So it's really all about getting, helping people get healthy and making sure that they're getting the right drug, that the right drug was made the right way, not just in the manufacturing plant, but all the way to your home.
We're going to get into lean and lean business system thinking and how it applies at Mesa Labs, but I'm really interested in hearing your story of how your lean journey began. At what point did you first get introduced to the concepts of continuous improvement and waste elimination and all these things that I know that you're a advocate and zealot of today in your role as CEO at Mesa?
I have a kid who's applying to colleges right now, and so that forced a lot of introspection for her, which kind of led to maybe some introspection for me in terms of how I would think about some of those questions. And this is one of those. And I'll go back and say, my first, what I would call my real job, was actually at Fuddruckers. And
the hamburger place.
Yeah. At the time, it was an innovative company. By innovative, I mean it charged you something like 8 times what a hamburger would cost at McDonald's. and you had to figure out how you're going to deliver value there. Well, my job was as an expediter. So I was the link between customers in the kitchen, right? So I would help to orchestrate making sure that the food was hot, right? That the whole order was together, that people could, that the right order was going on the right plate, got to the right people, that they understood how the process from there. And so I think in today's terms, that would be a water spider, right?
Yeah.
In manufacturing plant. And whether I knew it or not, I love that aspect of kind of orchestrating the production flow in a kitchen. It kind of came naturally to me, and I really liked it. I didn't necessarily know what I was doing or why, but those thought processes around, how am I spending my time? How do I make sure that things are well coordinated? How do I keep things moving? Because I had a very limited amount of space to deal with, both customer facing and in the kitchen. And how do I keep that whole flow going? To me, whether I was doing it naturally, but I was thinking about it at the time. And so I've always kind of had that, maybe that desire for that systems engineering or that flow-based process. And it took me a while to find lean. Maybe some other people were fortunate enough to jump right in, but my journey started at age 15 and probably took until my mid 30s before I really grasped lean and its importance in applying those things.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you're just like naturally inclined as a process thinker, and you kind of go back to your engineering degree that sort of fits that as well. Obviously, that came after the Fuddruckers experience, but some people describe it as finding your tribe, or almost like finding your religion. Like you never knew you needed this thing until you experience it, and then you can't imagine doing work any differently. Is that how you would describe it, or maybe different?
My journey, it got me there. So after engineering school, you're right, I say I was a systems thinker. I wasn't like a design engineer. And I'd like to think I was never good enough to be an actual engineer. And my first job was with Accenture, and I graduated into a recession. I thought I was going to do this kind of work, process improvement, computer-aided manufacturing, whatever was factory automation,
Sure.
and ended up shutting down factories. So that was my first job coming out. I think I was probably responsible for hiring associated with probably about 1,000 headcount reduction in my first year and a half. So I figured out then that at certain milestones, right, it doesn't matter what you're doing operationally, right? There was some financial constraints, and so I was kind of cleaning up a long history of poor decisions, right?
And inability to apply lean thinking, most likely.
Definitely. That led to, going back to business school, because I was like, well, the finance guys are making decisions, so I better learn finance and how to link production into value creation, right, from a financial perspective, which was a different scorecard, right? That led to Bain, where I worked maybe on a lot of top-down big change initiatives, very strategic and very intentional. And I kind of wandered there for a while, chasing cool situations, right? So, I was part of creating Babies R Us. Bizarre, like who would have thought that? That was a pretty fun experience. Part of, some pretty big transactions or things that end up being big transactions at Bain Capital. Part of, the software revolution. But all through that, there was this process mindset that I kept trying, to kind of pull back to. But what I was missing was the human piece of it.
Yeah.
So I was chasing situation after situation and finding myself that either I outgrew the culture I was in or the situation ended and I was left unfulfilled. It was like, this event was really cool and intellectually challenging, but it wasn't fulfilling because it wasn't a place where I could sustain that over a period of time. And that's what pulled me back into this. I was missing that human interaction, right? The pulling a team together to make a decision as opposed to a big kind of top-down, outside-in perspective in terms of making a real impact. And that's when I decided that the culture of a place was a lot more important to me than the situation that it was in. and that I could not try to chase the next shining lure of the next intellectual challenge, but really focus on the culture, what mattered to me. And that was, fact-based, process-based, really data-based decisions, risk management, not risk avoidance. How do we come together and build a team to solve problems? How do I get other people to pull in that direction? And what I didn't know that I was missing that whole time was lean, right?
Yeah.
I found my way.
Yeah, you sort of discovered your passion in a sense. As I think about, and I'm fortunate to get to work with a lot of leaders in roles like yourself, and I hold you up, and I haven't shared this with you, so I apologize if this is a surprise, but if I think about leaders who are very people centric and really lead with humility and are able to navigate every level of an organization, feel as equally comfortable talking with people in the boardroom as they are on the shop floor and at the front lines in a genuine way. Like you have that unique trait and character about your leadership style. And where did that come from? Is that from your upbringing? Is that from being in organizations like Danaher that talk about culture and people? So help me understand that, because I don't think that's something you're born with necessarily.
Well, I think one of the, what would I say? You got to lose enough to be humble, right? So,
Like setbacks, you mean, like in your own life?
well, not necessarily setbacks in your own life. That's part of it. I would say, look, if you're, and I kind of grew up on the commercial side a little bit, right? You have to love winning more than you hate losing, because you're going to lose a lot. In the M&A world, I lost 3 transactions for every one that closed, right? And so you're always figuring out that there are things you can do better, and that failure is a learning experience for you, right? And so it's hard to get too high on yourself when you know that 3 out of 4 times you lose. It's kind of like being in baseball, batting average at 300 will get you into the Hall of Fame. Batting average at 250 will get you fired, and somewhere in between is, but you're still losing, 7 out of 10 times to be great. And that's a little bit, kind of maybe the experiences that I had in what I was doing was that you lost a lot. I think likewise, my very first job wasn't at 15, first job was at 14, and I was a maid. So, Louisiana, which is where I grew up, was all basically the oil and gas industry moved to Houston. It was I won't say it was quite the depression, but more things closed down every day than opened up, and you learned a lot about how to persevere through those things with challenging times when everybody was in the same boat. And I like to think as an organization, you're all in the same boat together, right? And you got to have enough humility that you don't know a lot. And I would say, we're a diversified firm, but even if we were a one product firm, how often is the CEO the right person to make a decision? How often are you really, the first person who sees the breadth of a problem from the customer's eyes? That's the person who should be making the decision, right?
Yeah.
They're closest to the customer, see the whole problem, and give them a decision. So the reality is, how many of those are I often really, right? Capital structure, M&A, trying to set a culture and things like that is really what the job is. Making operational decisions is not what the job is.
Yeah. So going back to your lean story, was it Danaher? Was it the first experience at Danaher where you were introduced to a lean business system way of running a company and a platform, or did it happen before that?
A bit of my claim to fame at Accenture was after doing restructurings. I was part of the team that was applying re-engineering, and I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, business process re-engineering. Yep.
Process re-engineering, which was again, I think, a bit of a top-down, future-back aspect, meaning understand what you do today, but really don't pay a lot of attention. Just take a white sheet of paper out, design intellectually how it should be, and then just make that happen, right?
Rip the Band-Aid off, basically.
Yeah, but again, what it was missing was you could see that it was grinding for the people there. And again, that human aspect of appreciating the team's knowledge, their insight into the details, as opposed to just, a pretty high level process map and just saying, we'll go do that, was missing for me. And then the learning, the ongoing learning was a big gap, right? You weren't building a better team. You can build a better process, and that's all well and good. But you know what? Environment's going to change, market's going to change, customers are going to change, your business is going to grow, people are going to move in and out. To build something sustainable, you have to build that capability into the team. That's the sustainable competitive advantage, and that's what I didn't get until Danaher and kind of Lean closed those gaps for me, right? The pieces that I didn't know 100% what I was missing until I got there, right? Or saw Lean in practice.
So bring me back to 2017. You arrive at Mesa, and you didn't initially know you were going to be the CEO, or I don't think you did, at least. What was your vision for how you were going to bring this thinking, lean and continuous improvement and operational excellence and culture to the organization? So like, what did the first 6 months look like for you, and how you were going to bring that about? And then how did the Mesa way become the business system, if you will? So kind of a two-part question.
Yeah, so because of that mentality we talked about earlier, that the culture was really important to me. The culture, and I think lean is more than a tool set, right? Lean has to be a culture for it to be effective. That culture was when I was going to work in. So that was part of the interview process. Like, this is kind of how I lead. This is the way that we do things. This is what I believe in as a leader.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, then don't bring me in. That's fine. And that was a screening criteria for me as to which place I wanted to go to next and how I wanted to think about it. So that was there. So then the question was, I was already a successful company, right? Profitable, growing quickly. And so I didn't necessarily feel that I had the urgency or the impetus like we did, back in the days of doing a restructuring where you're failing, right? And you need to you're addressing the patient right then. I could build for the long term.
Yeah. And
I know public companies get a lot of flack about being focused only on the next quarter, the next quarter, the next quarter. But my view was, hey, look, this is where I'm going to wind up my career. I'm here for 10 plus years. No offense, but I don't really care what the stock price does in between here and there. Financially, it doesn't really necessarily matter to me. I'm going to build a company for the long term, something that can sustain after I'm gone, because ultimately, from my fulfillment, that's what really mattered, right? Was that I was leaving something that was lasting. So I could take it a little bit slow. So the first step was, we would say MESA, right? M as part of our culture is measure what matters. So let's figure out that, strategically, it wasn't that hard to figure out. We're 65% gross margin on a cash basis. So you want to grow the bottom line? Well, you better grow the top line. That's kind of pretty much it. And grow the top line, you better focus on customers. So great. Customer-based metrics, good, lean, ties out the financial strategy. I can explain it to the board. I can explain it to investors. Makes perfect sense. We're going to grow the company. Therefore, we're going to solve KPIs only from the eyes of a customer, so that everybody knew it, down to manufacturing, how we measured quality, how we measured defects, how we measured on-time delivery. All those things were framed in the view of the customer, what the customer experienced from us. And then
was that a natural transition for people? Like, oh my gosh, like they were shocked by that, or like they made that transition pretty quickly? Like, did you have to drag them kicking and screaming, I guess, is my question.
We were, the company was growing heavily through acquisition, right, for a while. And the good and the bad of that was it didn't necessarily have a culture. right? It was still coming together. And so things were still fluid. And so pulling people together on KPIs, that was straightforward.
Yeah.
Then we ran into some problems, right? We had a big quality issue. And that was the first time we turned KPIs into a real implementation of a tool, which was CDTNR, right? We used, which to me is A3 problem solving for quality issue. And we use that collectively together to solve a problem. And we were able to show the kind of impact that a focused team can make in 5 days, right? In terms of setting a direction, setting milestones, putting in place, implementing it, and that if we rallied together as a team, that we could really make things happen. And what had traditionally been kind of a hierarchical structure, right, where probably about 10 people made all the decisions, pulling people together was evidence that, you know, we could run the company a different way and that we could pull people together.
And that probably inspired people, right, to be given that responsibility and autonomy for making those decisions at lower levels in the organization? Or was it something they were scared of at first?
Both, right?
Yeah.
I'll say, you know, we'll go in and do major, you know, process improvement events, and you're like, you know, you're kicking it off, right? That's a big part of the job, is to get people really excited about it. And you go, you look at it at an audience, and you're like, you see, like, you know, half the people are looking back at you. I go, who's uncomfortable? Who knows what to do? Who's feeling uncomfortable? And like, you know, if people are really true, about half of them are going like, I don't really understand what's going on. I go, good. You're uncomfortable. That's you learning something new.
Right.
To do things the same way. We're going to challenge you to think differently through this process, and we are going to make real progress in these 5 days. That is our commitment to you. We're going to pull you through a process, but we need you to be fully engaged in doing it. And that to me is that piece, right? Initially, people are afraid. Everybody says that they want to be, you know, everybody wants to be included. Everybody wants to be empowered. With empowerment comes responsibility, and, you know, like a dedication, and that's where people get nervous, right? They like the words, but that real empowerment or inclusion freaks them out, because they're forced to engage. They're forced to use their mind at work, not just muscle memory, you know.
What I like about that is it creates this collective we. It's not you. It's like, I too don't know the answer. We will figure it out together, and we can be comfortable with ambiguity as we move through this together. And sort of, it's almost like a sigh of relief that the organization is breathing, goes like, oh my God, like, you know, I don't have to have all the answers, because Gary doesn't have all the answers. And like, we can, that takes some humility too, to sort of admit that in your role.
That's something that freaks out a lot of people, right? Say like, you know, I'm not the right one to make this decision. You are. They're like, what do you mean? You're the CEO. You're supposed to do this. You know, everybody has this image of the all-knowing, all-seeing CEO, and we kind of say, hey, look, that's you know, a myth built up by TV or egos, you know, CEOs with big egos kind of driving things and taking credit for stuff they didn't really do. But people below you have that too, right? They're looking to you for answers, and you got to be really comfortable saying, I'm here to facilitate a process that pulls the answers from you because I believe in you.
Yeah.
And I'm here to provide tools to you and a situation, an environment that can get the best out of you, but you're going to come up with the answers. And I'm right behind you.
I think you would say, obviously, you're never done with the Mesa way, and you're never like to a point where you can say we've accomplished everything we need to. But was there a point in the journey, going back to 2017 till now, where in your mind it was sort of like it really crystallized, or it demonstrated to you that we were on the right track? Was it a moment in time? Was it an event? Was it a challenge that your organization navigated through and came out on top of, that really solidified the Mesa way culturally in the organization, recognizing that there's always more you can do, for sure?
Oh yeah, and I'll say we're sophomores today, meaning we have enough experience to be dangerous at times. We still need, you know, guides and senseis, and you know, thank you and Tulane Focus for being that for us. But we're also, you know, trying to stay on a learning trajectory that's really high. You know, for me, like that process when, you know, KPIs, customer facing, were dedicated to a customer's financial logic. I didn't have to culturally indoctrinate people that this is how customers were important. I could just explain it to them rationally from the financials. The chance to make a real change and just kind of see the impact got people bought into the tools and the thought process. Then what we did is when creating the Mesa way, we focused less on lean tools per se, and I know we can talk about that aspect of it. We focused on the cultural aspect. We literally pulled 20 leaders and we sat them down in a room and said, I want you to describe the best place you ever worked, how it felt to work there, why, the best leader you ever worked with, what was it, the worst situation you ever worked in, you know, what do you want to avoid? And we just did word association.
Yeah.
We, to a large extent, came up with the Mesa way. Now, as a leader, I knew that I wanted to end it up with a lean-based culture. And so you can kind of steer some of these things and you can kind of nudge in a direction. But for me, I wanted it to be theirs, right? Yeah. I wanted it to be the team's, because if it was Gary's idea pushed down, then I was taking ownership and accountability away from the team. And that's what I like most about lean, is it keeps the ownership and accountability for process improvement with the team. I go, oh, let's keep the ownership and accountability for the culture with the team too. So I could kind of nudge it. And I think, you know, CEO, a big part of your job is to be a step or two ahead of the organization, right? And where it's going, and figure out how to nudge them in that direction that you think is right without being dictatorial about it. And we pulled it together and the team came up with the Mesa way. So that was really a cultural foundation. And then I think, you know, if you're starting off, you know, lean can be really hard if you're to absorb, if you just look at, you know, try to read the Toyota way, right? It is semi-indecipherable.
The textbook in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but it's more like a religious book. It's allegories and stories, and you're like, how do I pull that together into what the takeaway is? And the takeaway then might be really narrow, like eliminate waste. And you're like, okay.
And how do I implement that?
But that doesn't help me with the context. Or it could be very tool centric.
Yeah.
And at times, you know, lean business systems come across as, you know, you're a mechanic, but being a good mechanic means you mastered, here's 5,000 tools in your tool chest. And like, shit, well, now to me, the magic was those basic tools, you know, KPI-based leadership, value stream mapping to know how you're creating value for a customer, daily management to enable teams to have a forum to discuss what the KPIs mean, Kaizen, and other things as ways to affect process. Those, to me, the basics get you 90% of the way there, if applied well. And those then create the expertise to pull down the next tool or a more specific tool. Well, you'll need those eventually, but you can pull that, you know, you can find experts. Honestly, for most cases, you can go to the bookstore and pull down an article on, implementing Kanban systems or total productive maintenance or whatever it might be. That's the specific tool. But get those basics right, and it's not really that daunting. And it's not. Yeah. It shouldn't be that daunting to start your lean journey.
Shifting gears a little bit here, if you were to distill the secret sauce, you know, Gary's playbook, and if you were to give advice to other CEOs who maybe find themselves in a situation where they're taking on a new role, coming into a new company and aspiring to build something similar to what we've been talking about, or for that matter, restarting or rebooting their culture because maybe they've lost their way, or just getting started for the very first time, like they know nothing about lean, but they're liking what they hear and they aspire to start the journey. What advice would you give? Like, here's Gary's playbook of tips and tricks, recognizing every situation is different, but you know, what are your go-tos if you kind of look back in your career and it's like, do these things? and
Yeah.
you'll be successful.
Well, first of all, figure out a way not to make it necessarily about lean. Right? Lean is a bit of a means to an end, and to me, you got to appeal to people's hearts first. So whether that's, you know, the customer or what you do or a mission statement or something, you got to figure out a way to inspire people to want to change. Without that inspiration to want to change, the intellectual piece of lean or the tool set's going to come across as it's easy to reject as a way of changing. Your impetus to change can't be about you. It's got to be about the customer. Or in our case, you know, the purpose, we say, if you unified all the different tools we had, we could say protecting the vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And I could make it about people and their family that they touch. And I said, don't be better for me. Be better for, you know, be better for the people around your holiday table. And make them want to change. Once you have people wanting to change, whether that's a crisis or an ambition, right? You know, you have an impetus to want to change, so manufacture that. Then I think start with the basics and show traction on something that's meaningful and blow it up, meaning not wreck it, meaning make a really big deal about it, because you really need to reward the right behaviors in lean more than anything else, right? Firefighting, right, is something to be avoided. Most cultures emphasize firefighting. So you got to make it about solving problems at root cause systematically, you know, to show people that are expressing the behaviors, and then you can raise up a different model of behaviors while still showing traction on something that's meaningful, even if it's not financially impactful. You have to demonstrate, you know, the behaviors and the beliefs and the importance that you want and show traction right away.
Yeah, I would call that sort of like picking some sacred cows to make, you know, to use your Fuddruckers analogy, make hamburger out of. And you triggered a thought in my mind, and it was one of those catalyzing moments at Mesa, at least in my opinion. I'm sure there were several others before and after, but I remember we're doing this breakthrough Kaizen event, and you and I and Brian, your head of Mesa Way, we're standing in the lab, and we're talking about flow and how the fact that this big wall was impeding flow, and the team was like, yeah, we can't take the wall down. That's going to take months. We got to get permits and so on. So we kicked a hole in the wall, and we got the process started like that day, and the wall came down that day, and everybody's mindset was like, we can't to how can we? And like then that just pervades your daily thinking, and you stop running away from challenges and you start viewing the opportunity that challenges present in front of you, and you start thinking of ways you can overcome those.
Yeah, and how you put yourself in boxes with how things were done before, or constraints that you believe, right? So a big part of empowering teams is they in their own mind will have a whole bunch of constraints about what pleases you, what they can or can't do, and you have to show them that they are empowered, right? And that was a great example of, you know, you had the right idea, but you thought you couldn't because, you know, someone was going to object to it. I was going to object to it. Well, the team decided that was the right idea, so yeah, right? And I believe that was your foot, by the way. But yeah, the team had the right idea, and we just needed to show them that they could do it. And that I think gave them the belief in what the words were, which is you're empowered to make change. You guys decide that that's the right thing to do. I'm behind you. Even if intellectually I might say, hey, look, that's maybe 75% the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But fine, the team owns it. I'd rather have 100% ownership in what I think is 50% the right thing to do, but the team owns it 100% every day than the opposite. If I get exactly what I think is the right thing, but the team doesn't feel they own it, then it's not going to work, right?
What's your philosophy on mistakes? So to me, like on this journey, it's kind of like making an omelet, you got to break some eggs, and it's part and parcel with the journey that you're not going to get every decision right. Maybe kicking the hole in the wall was the wrong thing to do. We learned about it later. But how do you handle mistakes as a leader, trying to build this Mesa Way culture? Because if you have more people making decisions and taking personal responsibility, there's also more instances of people just not getting it right too.
Yeah, that's the entirety of business is, in my mind, I liken it to, it's like an algebra equation. Well, you're not really sure what the variables and the constants and whether, some added exponents to it. And so, a process mindset lays out a process to me as an equation. And you're trying to understand, if I improve various aspects of the equation from the customer's perspective, am I getting the customer output that I want? So it's an experimental philosophy. Experiments, by definition, mean that you're going to fail because you don't know. Therefore, how you deal with failure is huge. How you deal with somebody who showed the right behaviors, did the right things, pulled things together, designed an experiment well, and failed is really important. That is not a failure. That's a learning opportunity, because now you know the equation better, right? You've taken one variable and now I've explored that variable. It's not as sensitive. If I improve, the flow through this one cell, my on-time delivery really didn't move that much. Okay, great, that's fine. You still learned a lot by the process. You learned a lot about the equation to deliver customer value, and now you learn more. So failure is not failure. A failed experiment is not failure, it's a learning opportunity. And now we're lucky to be in a science and technology company where you go through and say, yeah, you're making a change, you have a hypothesis, document what your hypothesis is. If I change this variable of the equation, holding all the other ones constant, I expect this output to happen. Great, it didn't happen that way. Good, you learned something.
Yeah.
That's it. So celebrate failures. As a matter of fact, I think we don't fail enough, right? And we don't fail enough because, in a lot of cases, people aren't embracing that idea of empowerment. And the idea of empowerment doesn't mean you just push blame down the organization.
Yeah.
Right? You push accountability, but the accountability is not about blame. Accountability is about learning from failures and working to improve. And if you focus on that, the team will learn over time and they will improve. Not every time.
And then culturally too, it's the culture you're building. If your first reaction to a mistake is to figure out who did what wrong and make an example out of them, then everybody's watching that behavior and going, I'm not going to be the one to make that decision next time because I could possibly be subjected to that treatment that so-and-so went through.
But that's the power of KPI-based leadership or data-based leadership and the process mindset. Right, you can see people when you're saying, hey, look, let's not look, this situation happened. Let's look down at the KPIs. Do we agree that those things matter? Great, it didn't work out the way that we wanted to. What did we learn? How are we going to improve that? Then you go back, you dig into the process. The process isn't about people looking at each other and bickering back and forth about who did what. You document the process on a wall. Then all of a sudden, everybody turns towards the wall and says, how do I improve the process? Not how do I improve you, even though maybe you are running that entire process as an individual, but it's how do we do it better? And that is the big cultural difference to me than most other organizations. There's not a whole lot of who did what. It should be who showed the right behaviors. And I think if you look, to me, like, I love value stream mapping because it shows you have to pull the thread from the customer across multiple departments. 9 times out of 10, each department is doing the best that they can with what they know defines success for them. It's just that those gears aren't meshing.
Yeah.
And they don't appreciate that what they do, how they do something impacts somebody downstream. So everybody's trying to do the right thing, and they're doing the right thing based off of what they know, but it's not working for the customer. And I'll say that to me is a leadership failure, right? You're not helping them to see across, and they can't because of how you're structured or how you're leading. and you've got to
Yeah.
lead in a different way and help them see what that is. And that's not about blame of who. That's so far down the line of what your issues are. And if you're going to blame somebody on the who when people aren't doing something, you better start pointing at yourself first. Because I can guarantee you that, like I said, 9 out of 10 people are doing the right thing based off of what they know. And if they don't know what the right thing to do is, that's a leadership failure,
100%.
not individual failure.
So if you look back 2017 to 2023, and you were to do an advertisement for the Mesa Way and sell people on the impact that the Mesa Way brings to Mesa Labs, what's the greatest hits reel, if you will? What sort of tangible, quantifiable impact can you attribute to the Mesa Way? And I recognize sometimes it's hard to do that one-to-one, both hard impact and, in your opinion, the qualitative impact that it's had on the culture over that time.
Sure. We had a product that had 30% return rates. Now those are in, below 1%, right? Improvement in quality. Our on-time delivery has to whatever a customer wants has gone up 20 points. Perfect.
And I think you changed the way you measured that too. Like it's actually to a customer request date versus a promise.
Right. Yeah, whatever a customer says, right answer.
Harder standard too.
whatever a customer says is the right answer, right? I don't care if they wanted it yesterday. And then you figure out that it took them 3 days to get it through their own system, and so it was late before the order ever showed up in your factory. Well, I don't give a shit. You're late, right?
Yeah.
So, change it, because that's not what the user experience is. Our sterilization business went from a 1 to 2% organic growth to 10% in the last few years, right? I think that's probably like, the biggest and most impactful one. I would say, we've tripled in size while doing that. We brought in, new companies, new people, new teams. But we still have a tremendous long way to go, right?
Yeah, and I think on that acquisition piece too, you talked about in the intro about how Mesa was really a collection of many different acquisitions with many different cultures in a sense, and the Mesa Way has served to unite them and given you a blueprint by which to acquire and integrate people so that those acquisitions aren't dilutive, they're actually accretive, where 1 + 1 = 3, and it's not taking away from the culture.
Yeah, that's some of the strategic challenge that we have, right? We operate in a world where Danaher and Thermo Fisher are, I think we used to call them Death Stars, right? So
Death Stars.
That was a Danaher term, not a Mesa term. They're big monoliths that you have to figure out how to navigate through and how you're going to do things differently. And I think that's part of the excitement and challenge of being small, is you can be nimble. You can affect cultural change a lot quicker. You can make things happen with a smaller, more focused team that are harder to do in a very, very large organization where you're leading through leaders of leaders of leaders, right?
Yeah.
And that's what was exciting for me and a lot of people about joining a small company again. I think we did Mesa Way 2.0 as well, right? So Mesa Way, like I think some lean systems are a collection of tools, and you try to drive and you see some kind of torque wrench, and you're like, oh shit, I'm never going to learn all these tools if I just go tool by tool. I need to learn the principles behind it. But this concept of ownership, we went through Mesa Way 2.0. We grew so much that it was hard for people to translate, and we couldn't be, no offense to Danaher, Thermo Fisher, they've matured to the point where, like, well, this is kind of how we do things.
Yeah,
right?
take it.
This is it. Take it or leave. Not take it or leave it. Take it or leave. Right. This is how we do things, and it's proven to be, effective. We can still kind of be more humanistic, and so we needed to evolve it. So again, we pushed it down to not my direct reports, but a team of people below them, 2 levels down the organization, to redefine the Mesa Way in words that that meant something to them, because we needed those people to be ambassadors and lead, right? And I'm sure there'll be a Mesa Way 3.0, hopefully when we're 3 times the size again, and those will be champagne problems to have. But we want it to be a little bit loose, right, to align more with the principles behind lean as opposed to the tools, so that we can kind of continue to grow and we continue to have that sense of ownership. And that's what I hope to leave behind, right, is really the size, whatever, it's fine. I want to leave behind a sense of ownership and something that can sustain itself for the next 30 years, right?
Yeah, a culture of
caretaker
people who,
along the way of the culture, right?
yeah, you really know it's got constancy of purpose when you depart and the organization couldn't imagine running the business or behaving or acting in a different way that isn't congruent with the Mesa Way principles. And
Honestly,
the Mesa Way,
at the end of the day, that do they need you or do they not need you?
yeah,
right? I mean, we both had the good fortune of working with Larry Culp, who was just a fantastic leader. But Larry didn't necessarily start the Mesa, DBS, right?
yeah,
He started before he was there, and I think improved it. But the transition through Tom and to Reiner, right? The company survived and continued to thrive, and that to me was not a detriment to say we didn't miss Larry Culp, but Larry created something that sustained after he was gone. That's awesome. And if you're a growing organization, you want people to be moving up, right? You want people to be shifting so they can develop their careers. It's the only way you're going to keep them. So things have to sustain after they're gone.
100%. As you look back on the Mesa journey, mistakes, what's like one mistake that you can point to that if you had a second chance at it, and recognizing that, what you said earlier, like there are no mistakes, you learn. But if you had to answer that question, what type of mistake would you want to do over for?
I think we put in a layer of general managers, right? Because we were diversified. We needed decision making to be close to the customer, and you could hear the words coming back about how things were behaving. We didn't always have the evidence of that, right? Now, some of that I think was we lost ground during COVID, right? And I think bravado, and the words helped me believe that it was being implemented effectively. But I think we know the difference between subtle differences, right, that really make all the difference in the world. And we missed out on some of that, right? And I probably should have done even a better job of emphasizing culture and the right way to do things and getting evidence of behaviors and seeing it and being out there than I did. Some of that was because I physically couldn't. You couldn't be there. You didn't want to put people at risk. And I probably, I think we lost a little bit of ground. And now we're making it up again.
Was there external pressures that maybe motivated you to not focus on that as much, whether it be board, shareholder stuff, or was it all your own making?
Some of it was safety stuff. Some of it was, hey, look, we in the fall of 2019, we bought our first major overseas company. So we bought, we kind of grew by 40% with a business that was based in Uppsala, Sweden. Well, I wasn't going to get from Denver to Uppsala, right? So I had to kind of lead through things. And, that empowerment and I'm probably, despite the nice words you made up about me, I'm probably an introvert, so a little bit under-communicated by definition, and I let that kind of spiral a little bit. So that's really me, my issue. And whatever, blah, 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 market this, blah, blah, blah. It's always your issue as the CEO.
Yeah, you don't at the end of the day. Right? Nobody cares.
And I think, Well, you deal with the world the way that it comes, and your job is to make the most out of it. But I'd say that, our industry right now is going through a lot of troubles because of, a lot of changes going on in the industry right now. That's led to a contraction. And I talked to the sales rep, like, you take the world the way it comes. If you make the most out of it, that's it. That's all we can ask you to do. But whining about the market isn't going to help anything. You focus on what you can do, right? A3 problem solving. You don't go to, here's the trend line, and then go through all the reasons why and a whole long list of stuff that you can't actually control yourself, because that doesn't really help, right? You really need to continue to focus on what you can do, what I can do as a leader, what your procurement teams could do during a supply chain crisis, what your manufacturing teams could do when, we're having labor shortages, what the sales teams can do to support customers, even during a period of, constrained budgets and contraction. Everything else is just kind of whining about stuff you can't change. And it's a distraction, and it puts you in a foul mood, right? And there's always something you can do. We can always be better, right? I would say none of us are the Lionel Messi of business. So get over the fact that, you're going to have 3 opportunities for improvement on your evaluation, and 3 things that you're doing right. By definition, there are areas that you can improve. And oh, by the way, it is your leader's responsibility to help you show where you can grow.
Yeah.
Even if that's, something that will take you forward to the next level, whatever it is, they owe you, right, areas for opportunity. If they're not doing that, then they're not doing their job. So get over it. Everyone's going to have 3 things to improve.
Great words of wisdom. You ready for some questions?
You have 6, you can't deal with it, right? You have 6, you should probably fire that person, or they're going to want to the other 3.
Okay, so are you ready for some questions from the audience, Gary?
Well, sure.
Okay, this question, how to best ask this question. What do you think CEOs get wrong about lean and implementing a lean business system? So if you were to take a crack at that one.
I think CEOs, the main reason that they don't pull on lean, which to me is like about as obvious as anything could be, is this kind of fear of losing control. I think the reality is, if you're in any organization and we're 750 people, you actually don't control a whole hell of a lot. Mm-hmm. So get over it, right? So get over this fact that you can control everything and lead that way, and embrace the fact that you're one factor in the equation, but your job is to figure out how to get the whole organization leading. And if you do that, you're going to be successful. So kind of get over yourself a little bit.
Okay, just a reminder to everyone, you can type your questions in the questions panel, and I'll read them in as they're coming here. So the next question, how important, we're talking about Brian earlier, how important is it to have somebody who's the face of your business system in your organization, and at what size does that make sense? And
I'll say it's a 10 out of a 10 to have the resources and people who know what good looks like in operating lean. There are lots of ways and can help the organization through that. The goal, the change is whether what role of leadership do you expect out of that person? Are they owning and driving the program, and therefore, they're making decisions for people, or are they facilitating, coaching, and teaching, and still making sure that the players on the field are the ones who get the glory? That to me is kind of a pretty big difference in how you, either how you design it or the kind of person that you want, right? Nobody needs a lean leader who's telling everybody, instructing everybody, and showing them exactly what to do. because they're not learning in that case. You have to pull the team forward in my mind. And so Brian was the second person I was able to bring in from the outside. We created a senior vice president title to demonstrate to the organization how we viewed it, how important it was. But the reason we picked Brian, and Brian is absolutely, my partner, has done more for our lean journey than I ever have, is that he had a humanistic approach to it.
Yeah, agreed.
He could pull people and wanted to coach people and wanted to see them grow and could celebrate their success and didn't take the glory for himself, like ever. And I think he was critical, and God bless him.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is related to culture at Mesa. So do you have any ways in which you measure culture and the improvements and advancements you're making around culture in the Mesa way?
Yeah. We have, to us, it's embedded in our performance management system, right? So for us, performance management is half or even less objectives and outcomes, and a lot more about the behaviors that got to the outcomes. And so we spend a lot of time coaching and training people on behaviors. And so we want to see, that embed through performance management. And then, we have engagement surveys, right? That will tell you to a large extent whether your team feels like they can bring their best selves to work every day. And I think if you don't get those two things, all the tactical things of how many tools you use or how many events you ran don't really matter, right? And if you're doing it well, you're going to have a highly engaged team. They're going to want to come to work. They're going to bring their brain to work. They're going to feel it. They're going to tell you that they believe in what they're doing, and it'll come through those things. So, those aren't unusual, but you got to ask the questions the right way. And I think part of being on your lean journey is not to add lean on top of what you're already doing. It has to supplant what you're doing, right? And I think that's one of the other mistakes is people kind of go, well, I'll still run the company the way I'm going to run the company, and we'll just have some lean events over here, and we'll do things, and that's you're never going to be successful that way.
Yeah, usually your first hint is when people say we don't have time to do that Kaizen event on like what is perceived as like the biggest problem that the organization has. So your question is, well, if you don't have time to work on the biggest problem, what are you working on and how? So let's get those things. Yeah.
I think that's where some of the other things that people have misconceptions about lean. They talk about waste and it's all about cost reduction. Well, no, it's not, right? It's about adding value to customers and eliminating things that don't add value so you can do more of the things that do add value. So that by definition can often involve, efficiency improvements. The question is, cost reduction is what you choose to do with those efficiency improvements. Lean also generates lots of really good ideas for what you can do next that you should want to invest in. Yeah. If you're doing one and not the other, you get out of balance, meaning if I'm not getting more efficient, then I don't have the resources to invest in all those great ideas. People get distracted and it's too, nice. If I just take the costs and I just drop them to the bottom line every time, but I don't invest, well, then I kind of peter out on what my opportunity list are. You lack creativity. So you got to kind of keep those things in balance. And, lean is definitely not purely about cost. Lean is about value added.
So there's a question here related to that topic a little bit. So can you talk about how the Mesa way has been applied to non quote unquote traditional areas of the business, i.e. sales, marketing, customer service, back office, transactional, so on?
Yeah, I mean, that's my background, right? So I always had a challenge, and sure we could talk for a while about our experiences at Beckman, right? Of implementing lean into commercial. Lean for us commercial was a big part of helping to drive, some of our organic revenue improvements and the organic revenue potential of the company. We used, a value stream map approach to a sales process, which, in other places might be called the buyer's journey. Well, that's what the buyer goes through as their experience. Then you overlay data from your sales funnel management process, which is another thing, onto the buyer's journey. So now I've got the data to fill out the value stream map from a buyer's perspective. And then you lay out your organization and how you engage them through that process, and you figure out all the friction points that you can reduce in helping a customer to make a buying decision. So even though you're using the process mindset, you're using the systems engineering, the data analytics to support a process-based view on what to most people is a very qualitative subject that's embedded in the mind of a customer outside of your organization and only has a quality metric once every 12 months, depending on your sales process, right? Only get feedback on whether it works 12 months later, right? They buy something, they don't buy something. And so, but the process mindset helps you with leading indicators along the way, break down problems, reconcile the inside of the house and the outside of the house, all for the benefit of winning for a customer. It's super powerful. And it's really an exciting way to get, sales reps, that kind of thing, of those outside cats, right? They're not really good inside the house. And you bring them, you're able to bring them inside the house, right? And make them feel part of the organization again, but also they bring the customer's perspective inside the house. And you design something around helping them, and it really helps clarify a lot of what you're doing internally too. So it can be really, really important. And if like I said, if you're an organization that's 65% gross margin or higher, you have to be very customer focused. Look, if you're a 20% gross margin business making steel, that's a commodity. Okay, I get it. You've got 80% of revenue or 90% of revenues in your cost structure. You have to focus there. But for a lot of organizations, it's really about revenue growth. So,
all right.
Bring the cats inside.
Outside cats, I have a new thing to call salespeople. So Gary, thank you so much. I learned a lot. It's been fun catching up as always. So before we bid farewell to everybody on the phone, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the insights and practical knowledge that Gary shared with us today and how you can apply these lessons to your own organization's lean journey. And if you have any further questions or would like to explore the possibilities of initiating your own lean journey or enhancing your own lean transformation, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Lean Focus. We're here to support you every step of the way, and we can help get you on your way with that. Again, thank you, Gary, for sharing your time with us and your expertise, and grateful for your contributions to this interview series.
Thank you. I'll just say, I probably should have been doing it throughout, but I've been blessed enough to have Damon and the Lean Focus team with us throughout the journey. They've been really instrumental in helping us scale and helping us penetrate, because it is a big change and you do need resources. But also, I would say, he didn't ask me the question I was hoping, which was, who are some of your mentors? And whether he knows it or not, he's been a mentor for me throughout this Lean journey. So thank you. Oh, the obligatory, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your partnership for a very long time. And
all right.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Bye all. Take care. Happy holidays.